Hello YouTubers! Basically we're going to show you how to get the best performance out of your standard Rubiks brand Rubik's Cube, no BS. Okay, before we get started, you should take a look at this video right here. Okay, it shows you basically how to stretch out the springs on your Rubik's Cube. And this is a crucial step. It helps you cut corners better, it makes the cube easier to handle, and it's going to help improve the performance enhancements we're going to do in the next few steps. Okay guys, step 2 is pretty basic. It's just sanding. There are a few things you want to know. First, you want to use a fine grit sandpaper. You don't want to use anything too fine, you're going to sit here for hours. 600 grit worked perfect for this cube. 600 fine grit sandpaper, just fine. Just one piece, you're not going to use very much of it. Start with the edges, because they're going to be the easiest. You're going to want to sand them at an angle on a solid surface. Okay, holding it in your hand is not going to work because you're going to make some funky bulges in it if you do that. So lay it on a table, push down flat, sand at an angle. Now it's important to sand at an angle and not in a random direction. I'll explain that later, but basically you're following the grooves that are already in the cube from normal use. You're just going to sand in that same direction. Now you want to sand each piece until it's as flat as you can see with the eye. Now I won't be able to show you on the camera, but most normal cubes, this is a normal Rubik's Cube, non-sanded. You can't see it in the video, but there are slight bulges in some of the cubies. You want to flatten them out as much as you can. Once they look pretty flat to the eye, that piece is done. You can do it on each side, obviously. Okay. The corner pieces are a little more tricky because you have to do 3 sides on each corner. So it'll take a little longer, and you're not going to really be able to push down on the table. So if you do it on a corner, you should be able to get it just right. Okay, and same goes with these ones. You're going to sand them at an angle, just like so, not in random directions. You want to follow the grooves that are already in the cubie. And once, like I said, we'll explain that once we get to the lubricant section. Okay, that's as basic as it gets for sanding. Once you're done sanding each piece flat, you're done with step 2. Okay guys, for section 3 is piece modifying. This is the longest step by far, but it does make a big difference in the feel of the cube. This is the modified cube. This one has already been completely modified. This is a non-modified Rubik's Cube. This is a corner piece from the non-modified Rubik's Cube. And this is a corner piece from the modified Rubik's Cube. Now you might not be able to see this in the video, but if you look closely, the non-modified cube has sharp edges. The modified cube has rounded edges. Now rounding these is pretty straightforward. You just take the sandpaper and just sand each corner until they're no longer sharp. You just want to be rounded. You don't have to sit there for a long time and really grind down on them. You just want to smooth them out. This gets a little bit of the excess plastic out of the way and actually helps you cut corners quite a bit better than the standard Rubik's Cube with non-rounded edges. Okay? That's section 1 of modifying the cubes. That one, like I said, is pretty straightforward. Okay, section 2 of modifying the cubies is basically rounding out the internal edge pieces. Now you don't need to be intimidated by this. You're not going to hurt the cube. Rubiks brand Rubik's Cubes are very durable. What you're doing is simply removing excess plastic. The plastic hardly comes in contact with other pieces inside the Rubik's Cube, but it does come in contact with the corner pieces. And by removing this excess plastic on the inside of the cubie, you'll cut corners a little bit easier, and the cube will become slightly lighter. Lighter isn't a big deal, but cutting corners is. Okay, you just basically use a Dremel. If you don't have a Dremel, there is really no other way I can think of doing this safely anyways. We used an air Dremel. I recommend using low speeds, whether you're using electric or air. If you're using an air Dremel, set your PSI somewhere between 20 and 30. The lower the better. For 2 reasons. One, lower speeds will still grind this and keep it easy to control. And if you're running at a high speed around 60 psi, you're just gonna flick off the cube and probably burn yourself. Now we dremeled it down to almost exactly, it's hard to see, but it's almost exactly ½ a centimeter on each edge. Don't go any further than that, simply because you don't need to. There's no reason to take more plastic off it than you have to, but ½ a centimeter should be perfect. Step 4 is lubrication, but we're going to try something that a lot of you have probably not even heard of: graphite. We're going to use graphite for a lot of reasons. Number one, it is 100% non-abrasive. You will not hurt your cube using graphite. Number two, it's a dry lubricant, which means things aren't going to stick to it, your cube is not going to get greasy, and you don't have to worry about it drying out because it already is dry. So the performance is going to be the same from day 1 to day 20. Graphite will tend to stay in the cube longer than a standard lubricant will too. You can get graphite store-bought in sprays, powder, in cans. You can get it in little tubes. Automotive stores always sell it. You can probably get it from Home Depot or Lowe's. But my favorite way is a lot cheaper, and it's simply to use a standard number 2 pencil. Number 2 pencils use 100% graphite. They do not use lead, so you don't have to worry about toxic. Standard number 2 pencil, you want to crack it open basically. You can do this any number of ways you want. I used a safety razor to basically just peel away at the wood until I got down to the graphite. You could probably use a pair of pliers to kind of chew at it. It really doesn't matter. You just want to expose the graphite, and it's really simple. Open up your Rubik's Cube and start shaving it in there. That's all you have to do. It's going to fall into your Rubik's Cube in a really fine powder. You want to get it on the edges and the internal pieces. The whole step should take, from the time you start putting it into the cube, you probably are only going to need to do it for about 2 minutes. It doesn't take a lot. This also goes back to the step where I told you to sand in the direction of the grooves. And the reason why is this will help the graphite stay in the cube longer. Instead of being flung out, it's going to stay in the grooves and go around with the cube. Now, if none of you have ever heard of this, graphite is used in a lot of plastics for lubricants. They use it in pine wood derbies for Cub Scouts to make the wheels spin faster. It's used for garage door openers for dry lubricant. It's used in a lot of marine equipment where they need dry lubricant so things don't get stuck to it, non-corrosive. Okay, so basically you're just going to shave the graphite into the Rubik's Cube. Do it on at least 2 sides. If you have a lot of extra time and junk pencil, you can do it on all 4, but you really don't have to. The graphite will find its way into the entire cube after about 5 minutes of just solving. You will really be surprised at how smooth this will make your Rubik's Cube. We have tried just about every kind of lubricant: oil, CRC, PV, anything you can name, Vaseline, and nothing really compares to the graphite. You have to try it. I really can't explain it, but it is really smooth. It just feels like butter. And it will not hurt your Rubik's Cube. One thing I would like to note: your hands are going to get really dirty, and so are your stickers. The graphite will come off of the stickers just from normal use. You can rub it off with a damp cloth, but just from using it, it'll rub off and it won't get stuck. So if it gets dirty, don't freak out, because it'll be fine. That's pretty much it. If you've done all of these modifications to a standard Rubik's Cube, you have just done a performance enhancement beyond anything that I've ever seen on a standard Rubik's brand Rubik's Cube. Any of these steps is going to improve the performance of the cube. You don't have to do every single one of them, but if you could only do one of them, I would recommend the graphite. And yeah, just try it. There's nothing else.